This story really begins when we moved to Temecula in 2003 and decided to remodel our home and bring the outdoors into our living space. Everything we did in the backyard was to invite you outdoors to enjoy the view. From the pool, the jacuzzi, the sauna, the barbecue island, from everywhere you are out there, you enjoy the view of the beautiful mountains. This is the before and after of the bedroom upstairs, and as you can see, we really did bring the view right into the room. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I see from laying right in bed is the beautiful mountain. And there's Jack standing guard at the door. We leave the doors open because the air is so fresh and clean here. We can do that. And then I walk out on the balcony and see what the day is to be like for me. After about a year of that morning ritual, I decided to paint a painting of those beautiful granite peaks, and right in the middle of painting that painting, I discovered that there was a company that had some other ideas about what to do with those peaks, heavy industry. So I met some other people of like mind, made some great friends, and we turned the painting into the logo for our very first fundraising event. The best thing about this whole experience has been the great like-minded people that I met and got to become friends with. Shortly after we moved in, we realized how really windy it is here all the time, but the wind comes directly over that peak and through that pass there and keeps the valley air clean and our house cool most of the time. As you drive around Temecula Valley, the peaks are visible from all over the valley. That's from right in front of our house, and this is in our neighborhood. And this is at Patricia Birdsall Sports Park with Pechanga Casino in the foreground there. This is up at a park in Red Hawk. Then at a very busy intersection where we get gas, there it is. This is from the new public library in the middle of Temecula. As I studied this shape, it became familiar to me, and I realized what it reminded me of, and wonder if we'd had a glacier here, if this is what our valley would look like. Without being overwhelming, these magnificent peaks add to the beauty of playing golf at Temecula Creek Inn Golf Course. The color of the face of the granite is different every morning, and I especially love the mornings when they're bright pink, and I can just imagine them turning into a painting right before my eyes. By contrast, other mornings she's shrouded in mist and reveals herself slowly as the sun melts away the clouds that just seem to stop right at this pass here. A few days after we had a lot of rain, when the sun was hitting the mountain just right, you could see how far down the face of the mountain the water was emerging, just saturated with water all the way through. If it wasn't for this proposed industrial project, I might never have learned about the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve, run by San Diego State University. It's on 4,300 acres that surround the Granite Peak area. These are some images taken from the cameras on the property and some taken by some of the scientists that live and work there and do very important research. Dr. Matt Ron is the director of the reserve, and here's what he has to say about the proposed industrial project on the land adjoining his reserve.
Nobody likes to, force conservation upon a landowner. It happens, we all know it happens, but in this case, the landowners do have an out. Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, Nature Conservancy, Trust for Public Land, and San Diego State University have all said if this project doesn't go through, or if the landowners decide, to do something else, that cooperatively we would be willing to purchase the land from the owners. This property has been around for over 4 decades to serve research and education. We do very sensitive research on the property, and and one of the things that we are definitely worried about is the impacts to not just the types of things we do on the property, but we're talking about 75 years, almost a century of long-term impacts, and longer term than that, that pit is not going away once. Yes, and Scripps Institute is doing seismic studies out of here. And then just up in the hills here, we've had installed a plate boundary observatory, and it measures sub-millimeter movements of the plates as they slide past one another, both of which will, experience impacts. We have studies that do, they estimate ozone. That little brown wooden tower right here is sucking up air to tell us how bad the ozone levels are here. Ozone up in the troposphere is good because it keeps out UV light. At ground level, it causes respiratory distress and asthma in children, and it's just a horrible, ground-based. EPA has recognized it as a constituent of concern. This site right here for Riverside in San Diego County has the best ozone levels in the region. Forest Service has been surveying and monitoring these areas for a long time, and they just added us a couple years ago and found out, wow, you guys have some of the best air quality in sight. The reasons we have such good air quality is, of course, the Santa Ana winds that come in, but also because of the marine effect in the gorge. This area basically pulls all of the air from the ocean up, and if you live in the Rainbow or Temecula area, you see that big sort of cloud in the morning a lot of times sitting over Highway 15. Well, that's where your air is basically flowing, and it sort of settles into
Another really important thing I have learned about these granite peaks is that they sit right in the middle of the only remaining wildlife corridor between the coastal mountains and the Palomar mountain range, where the animals travel back and forth. I believe this corridor is only about 3 miles wide, and the proposed industrial project would sit square in the middle of that. Most of the animals, as I understand it, travel under the I-15 in the drainage ditches, but the mountain lion, the top of the food chain, actually sits on the side of the freeway and studies it for a day or two and then will run across. As I understand it, if this industrial project was to be approved and built, the mountain lions on the coastal mountain range would be so isolated, their genetic pool would be so small they would eventually disappear. On the morning of the summer solstice, at the very first light of dawn, I was awakened by a bright light shining in the window, and it was the moon. It was a really magical morning, and I spent the day out in the garden with the animals and the birds, celebrating this wonderful day. This is the special place I sit in the garden. I'm making sort of my version of a medicine wheel. Becomes a sacred place for me to sit and meditate and view the mountain. Thanks to the vision of some people at Google Earth, we are now able to take a flight for free from my garden through the air up, and I can show you where I am in relationship to these wonderful granite peaks. Here we go. As we fly over the top of the peaks, we find there's this wonderful valley behind the peaks, and we turn north as we come down closer for a better look at this valley. As we rise back up again, you can see the site of this proposed industrial project, where it is in relation to the city of Temecula. Because I, along with many others in the area, believe this spot should remain whole, I invite to the valley in my prayers and in my meditations the masters, the archangels, the gods, the elders, the nature spirits of the planet. I invite them to come together to celebrate this place and to keep it whole. I invite them to come and dance in celebration. I especially invite the pure hearts of newborn children, as this is their heritage. Because I believe those gods and masters won't come unless we call them, I believe we must do our part in envisioning what we want as caretakers of this planet. I believe that to be a human experience. So I sit in my yard in my medicine wheel and I expand my heart out. I expand it out so that it will eventually include the sacred mountain space. And I fill it with love. I built this fountain in my yard that also directly faces the mountain in honor of my vision of keeping that mountain whole. I believe that God created a deed for the animals, for a place in the sky, on the land, and in the water. I also believe it's man's job to recognize and honor that deed so that he need never walk here alone. I also did this mosaic artwork around the jacuzzi, which spells out in little silver letters, in gratitude to Mother Earth and Father Sky. That was for my parents, but also for the elders of the planet. So I invite each and every one of you to find some time to allow this creative or divine energy to flow through you and see what comes up. See how you can honor this mountain. It may be private, it may be something you share, but I believe together we can imagine this mountain whole and keep her whole.